hence why you two are here today. Now, this topic might not apply to a lot of people. Fine. But I know that certainly in a few years' time, it will apply to me. And I want as much information I can to make sure that I've got that good balance. This is where you two come in. Okay. Now, you two are what I mentioned earlier, Gen X.
Okay.
So that, if I've got that correct, you're from what, the 70s to the early 80s, because I've just missed the Gen X generation.
Yeah. 60s, Lord.
60s, okay, 60s there. Right? We're going a bit further back.
Yeah.
But what I saw, the older generation, shall we say, the first immigrants to come from abroad and settle here, their mindset to what I've seen from both you and others is quite different.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
talk to me about how you felt when your son first approached you to say he wants to get married. What were the first thoughts going through your mind at that time?
I think every individual will go through very different experiences. So I'm unique to my own experience. So I can't speak on behalf of all the mother-in-laws to be, or mother-in-laws. But yeah, I feel obviously the first thing that went through my mind was, first of all, are they even going to be compatible? Are they even going to be compatible? And obviously, looking at that, it was, okay, well, let's have us introduced to the young lady and just try and, get to know the girl, get to know about her, understand her background, what her goals are, what her ambitions are, what she's expecting from this marriage. I think these are all the kind of questions that were going on in my head, because I wanted to see whether or not are they even going to be compatible to fit in with not just themselves but also with family. I think family is so important. And so as a mother-in-law to be, I think they were like, I suppose it was scary to a point, because it was nervousness that was kicking in. It was apprehensiveness. It's like, oh my God, how is this going to be? Is she going to like us? She might like my son, but is she going to fit in with us? Or is she going to like us? And I think for a mother, bringing up her son for her life, and then obviously then, coming to a stage where now you're having to give that son away, because you are giving your son away for somebody else now to take responsibility over him. I think you do have that nervousness inside you that, is this going to be a good person for my son, where holistically she's going to look at us as a holistic kind of family, or is she just isolating herself and just looking at the husband and that is it, and then that's as far as it goes? Because I think this is what I'm finding with the newer generation, that they feel it's husband and that's all their responsibility is, and then everything else is in the background. And so I think for me that was my first thoughts of when I kind of went into it.
So basically what you're saying is, as a mother-in-law, as a human, you were also very nervous.
Absolutely.
You were nervous. It's not just the other side. You were nervous as well. And there's that stereotype, isn't there, that you're not marrying just the man, you're marrying the family in a sense, because you've got to live in a cohesive way in order for you to gel and get along and have that, sense of, shall we say, peaceful travel journey in life, right? Shaymasi, what about you? How was it for you when, you've got all daughters, so you were effectively actually giving your daughters away.
That's right.
Sophie was bringing a girl into her family, so you're on the other spectrum of it. What about for you? What was your first thought or feeling that went through you when you were approached about hand in marriage for your daughter?
For Zahra, it was so basically the way I look at a girl getting married into another family. I think the transition is quite hard in itself. So going into another family, trying to get used to everybody, but you have to be open to yourself as well as an individual. You don't have that barrier. You go in, as you are, but be a bit mindful about what you say to your in-laws or whatever. You can't just voice your opinion. So you've got to be mindful, get to know them first. then you know what will upset them, what won't upset them. So you give that education to your girls. That you can't just say anything when you get married. It's not like being in your own house with your parents where you feel that you can say anything. You know, so just be a bit mindful, a bit composed. You get married, you go into a family, different culture, you know, different lifestyle. So you just adapt. You know.
So that's what I was referring to earlier, where daughters do have somebody in the background giving them that advice, but there's no one there to give the mums to be, the mother-in-laws to be advice. And that's what sometimes does worry me, because what I saw my mum be as a daughter-in-law herself is very different to what I've now witnessed. So, for example, my mum, she worked. My dad had a grocery shop, the typical Asian, stereotypical business. They had that. My dad was also a builder, but she ran the shop and home as well. Shiri Masi, you would have witnessed that, because you were up north when I was growing up, and this was before I was born as well. And what I saw was my mum was, you know, working all the time and also taking care of home.
Yes.
As the daughter-in-law, she was taking care of home. She was making sure the food was cooked, the house was clean, the children were raised. She was a one-man band, and that's many women across the globe. That's not just restricted to us, right? But as time's gone on, she's become a mother-in-law. You know, her sons, my brothers, haven't brought the wife home. They've all lived separately. So I'm what I would call my mum a distant mother-in-law.
Okay.
Because she's not a living mother-in-law, distant mother-in-law, right?
Yeah.
So they say distance makes a heart grow fonder. So they're not clashing all the time, because they're not there in front of one another in each other's way. That's what I see. But then I see you, sort of, and I see you guys, and not just you, I've seen so many others as well, where the daughter-in-laws are living in the house, and it's amazing. I mean, I've seen the way you and your daughter-in-law, Fatima, the way you two interact with one another. You wouldn't tell that she's your daughter-in-law. At least I couldn't tell, you know, and I've known you for years, so I know what you're like, your personality and so on. But I didn't know Fatima when I first met her, so I didn't know what she was going to be like. But your interaction, alhamdulillah, it's serene, you know, it's cohesive, it bonds, it gels.
I think nobody's perfect, and we've all got, you know, our own personalities, and, you know, I think what we've got to understand, I think, for the younger generation is, and also for the older generation, I think we're all going through changes in life, and so this was another chapter of my life that I was falling into now. So I was a mother, I was a daughter-in-law, and then now obviously moving on to becoming a mother-in-law. I think, again, that was a different hat that I had to obviously consider to put on my head. And so I had to understand that, hold on, I'm bringing a daughter-in-law into my home. She's also got to, I've got to help and support her and help her navigate. I think those were the important things, I think, for me, was to help her navigate and to bring her and make her inclusive in our home. Because don't forget, you know, you're a family of, say, 4 or 5. Now you're bringing the 6th member into your home or the 5th member into your home. It's now adjusting, you know, the dynamics are changing. Responsibilities are changing. There's so many things where I would probably just be like, oh, I'll make a cup of tea for my son. Then I'm thinking, hold on a minute, he has a wife. I might be imposing. I probably feel like I'm doing her a favour, but for a wife that might not be the case. It'd be like, well, that's my responsibility. Allow me to make that tea for my, you know, for my husband. And I think those are the kind of things that you probably will find that you're kind of overstepping maybe when you're living together in a home. And I think it boils down to having great communication and a great understanding with each other. I think you've got to communicate openly. I know that the generation above us, probably, you know, daughter-in-laws were not allowed to talk. back, or maybe even talk about their feelings or to express themselves. I think the newer generation of as mum-in-laws, I feel now there's a lot more about open communication, and when they are talking about how they're feeling, it's not personal. And I think that's probably where we need to separate ourselves.
Absolutely, I agree. My WhatsApp is currently blowing up, so
Wow.
I am not ignoring everything that you've said. In fact, I am taking in comments that are being sent to me directly, and I've had some really good comments. The person has not said whether they want to stay anonymous or not, so for now I will not say their name, but what they've said is mothers can multitask. Indeed they can.
Yes.
So can a lot of other people, but mothers more so, because that's the responsibility that they have to bear. They've got the weight of the world technically on their shoulders, but it's also about give and take.
Yes.
And that's solid, you know, absolutely. It's all about give and take. You can't be, it's like what you said, Shirimasi, when your daughters are going into another house, they've got to respect
That's right.
the lifestyle, the living arrangements and so on. It's all about give and take. But equally, the family taking that child in have to remember that this is somebody else's daughter, sister, you know, friend, you know, niece.
And sometimes they move.
Absolutely.
From a different town, city.
Different culture, and you have to be mindful that not only is that person someone else's daughter or someone else's grandchild, someone else's world, as my dad calls me, but that's a human being with emotions, with feelings. They could be slightly sensitive, they could be slightly you know, more robust. I mean, I'm a very robust person in myself, and I do want to like, as I've mentioned, that I've seen you guys raise your daughter-in-laws. I've seen another one of my Masi, Nazma Masi Dahovi, who is, again, she's slightly older than yourselves. In fact, she's my mum's generation, but she's completely polar opposite to my mother. In, you know, the way she interacts, the way she lives, and so on and so forth, because she is, well, she speaks fluent English, first of all. My mum, bless her, can't. But her approach to life is also very different. And I see all this and I think to myself, well, how am I going to take care of my daughter? It is something that I worry about. And people look at me and say, oh, Zainab, you've got years to go. I actually haven't. I'm 42. Yeah, I'm 42, but my eldest is about to turn 24. Now, I pray that he's going to wait a couple of years. You know, I want them to, you know, just explore life a little bit more before they settle down, because I've got some rules. I've got some rules about when they get married, right? And you may think, Zainab, what? But my rules are, when you get married, you share equal responsibility in the house, right? If she's cooking, you're cleaning. If you're cleaning, she's cooking. It's shared responsibility. It's not just her responsibility to think about your food. It's your duty as well. If you're going to have children, I don't mind babysitting, but I'm not babysitting while you go gallivanting all around the globe. I'm sorry, I ride a motorbike. I am going to be selfish. I want to enjoy that element, and I have said to my kids that if you want me to babysit your children, I will teach my grandchildren to ride a motorbike. So they're all no. Like, but my main concern is keeping that peaceful balance between the two. I'm mindful of bringing someone in. What if Allah na kare? Because this is not something that we ask for, we wish for. But what if there is a disagreement between the two, and you know your son is right, or you know that your daughter-in-law is right? Do you see what I mean? You're already going, but these are the things I think about,
But
you know? How do you keep the balance?
But would you get involved? Because it's best not to, because if it's between the husband and wife, why would the mother-in-law get involved?
Well, be honest, how many times have young children gone to their elders to ask for advice?
Yeah, that's different.
Advice and guidance.
Advice and guidance is completely different. But as a mother-in-law, to intervene in whatever they're going through, or maybe telling the girl off, or maybe telling the boy off, but you have to be really careful so you're not coming across being biased.
I think
I
this
agree.
is where the biting the tongue
Yeah.
comes in. You've got to bite your tongue unless they're coming to you for guidance and support, as Shirin said. I think it is so important that even then, when you are giving that guidance and support, that you have not got the mums or the mother-in-law's hat on.
Yeah.
It is an individual who maybe put yourself into that person's shoe. I think that's very important, to keep putting yourself into that person's shoe. For a daughter-in-law, for me, for my daughter-in-law, I need to put myself into her shoes as well. But I need to also understand, because you've said earlier about giving your son advice about equal, share, you got to do your bit, make sure you're helping, blah, blah, blah. That's understandable. That's general advice. However, if the wife has agreed to, for the husband to, well, actually, no, I don't want you in the kitchen because that's not something that I would like you to do. I would like to serve you instead because that's what I would love to do. Then who are you? Who are you to give that advice?
So what you're saying there is, even though we are, well, I'm not, but you are, even though we are the mother-in-laws, even though that is technically our house, but the children are living with us, so it's their house as well.
Yeah.
You have to make that conscious decision not to interfere all the time. Okay, let's park that for a moment.
Okay.
I have had a direct WhatsApp, and I have to admit, my phone is blowing up at the moment. But just as a reminder, you're on Ramadan FM, the 7 p.m. show with Zainab Zaeem, with Breaking Stereotypes. Today's show is about the new generation or the next generation of mother-in-laws myth busting. So it is an interactive show. So I would say that to avoid me being distracted and on my mobile, please do send in your text messages or your WhatsApp to the studio line, which is 077 488 55055. The studio line to send in a comment or a question is 0116 48 22086. Now, if there are any daughter-in-laws to be or current daughter-in-laws, mother-in-laws, and if you've got an opinion or a question that you want to put forward, please do get in touch. We can talk about that. If you want to remain anonymous, then do put ANON at the end of your message, and we will not read your name out. We wouldn't read out your telephone number anyway, due to data protection and GDPR, and that's me with my lawyer hat just there. Okay, so we were talking about the interfering, okay? Interfering, right. So one of my, okay, I'm going to have to mention who this is. This is my brother. And he's actually said, just say it's your favorite brother. I do have 3 brothers, so if I say it's my favorite brother, I guarantee you the other 2 will come down on me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
So Zunaid, you are going to get me into trouble from the others. So he said, father is always the head of the family and mothers are the heart of the family. And that's actually really, really sweet. I didn't know you could be that sentimental, Zunaid, but there we go. And he's... okay, I shouldn't laugh at this, but he said, mother-in-laws will always interfere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
But it depends on what generation he's talking
Yeah.
about.
which generation he's talking about?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So would you then say that the dictated type of upbringing that some of us have probably seen or observed has moved away considerably,
Definitely.
and daughter-in-laws don't have to worry too much about that kind of environment?
Definitely. I think we have these conversations, especially amongst
Ourselves,
girls
yeah.
and ourselves,
Yeah.
and we do have these conversations. And I think it's really changed now, this generation, where there's a lot more independence now. Girls, I think with this Gen X that we talk about, we're born and bred here, don't forget. So we understand culture. We understand, the way of life. We understand maybe the struggles that we might have gone through, when we were younger, going into families. And, all I can say is that everyone means well. This mother-in-law from an older generation, they mean well. They're probably protective of their family and probably feeling that fear that, what if my son gets taken away? Or, to break that relation, break them ties with the family. Because if that daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law is not getting on, that son is in between that relationship and very, very torn. And so many times I've seen that where, you know, because of this breakdown of relationships and ties and bonds, they become very protective and very territorial, and it does break relations. It does break families. And I can see that, which is why I think it's so important. And I think we've come to understand that to have these open and honest conversations are very, very important. Be truthful. You know, if my daughter is in my house and she's saying to me now, Mum, I really feel now that I really need to move out now because it's not working for me, then we have to respect that. We have to respect that because, okay, it's not working. First of all, what is it that's not working, or it's just not for them? Then we have to respect that. But if they feel that, no, this is what we want and this is how we want to live our lives, we've also got to understand that we've still had to change our ways of life as well, and changing them dynamics, but for the greater good.
Absolutely. Yeah. For them to kind of spread their wings, you know, fly the nest. Yeah. I've had a comment or question come in from Anon, so they wish to remain anonymous. Something that we mentioned earlier. Now, Shirin Masi, you straight away, you know, as my lovable Masi always does, Zainab yes, Zainab no. Yeah. You said, no, why should a mother-in-law interfere anyway? Yeah. And I said, what if they come to you for advice? Yeah. So Anonymous is asking, is giving advice to their child interfering? Now, I want to then ask Anon, that are you asking whether if the child comes to you, so let's talk about it from that side, or if the child doesn't come to you but you've seen it and you want to give your child advice.
Right, so what tends to happen is, so if your child, there's times where, you know, your daughters might come to you and say, oh, this and this, right? So you either say that, no, it's not like that, or you turn it around and say, maybe you got the wrong end of the stick or something like that. So you kind of diffuse the situation because it depends on the magnitude of whatever's happening. But if you see that your daughter is suffering, so how far would you go to see whether you're going to say something or not? Because you don't want to plant a seed either. So you've got to be really careful as a mother as well, that how are you going to handle this? So you could subtly ask, is everything okay? Everything fine? If there's anything, just let me know. So maybe she might want to offload, but that doesn't mean that you just go crazy.
It's your moment to then swoop in and start saying, oh, but why this and why that? You should do. Yeah, I get you.
Because you don't wanna make a mistake, because the minute you say something to your child, she'll go back and say that.
My mum said this.
My mum said this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're not really helping that relationship or the family dynamics with your mother-in-law. Do you understand? So it's really difficult how you word things. I think you have to be very understanding as a mother-in-law, you know, but it's very difficult. If you're living together, it's going to be difficult because it's just treading on eggshells. Some people are, because you're not on the same mindset. Some people are not on the same mindset.
Yeah. No. I mean, everyone has different personalities.
Some girls come from a very liberal background.
Yeah.
And then they go into a very cultured background.
Or the opposite.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to kind of balance that. But I always say that it's always best for the boy to tell the wife to be the expectations, if there is any. There shouldn't be any. But if there is any, these are the expectations. This is how my family dynamics work. Just a bit of like insight of how the family works. If you don't live with them, you'll never know what they're like, because you're away from them. It's like you said earlier on.
Distant family.
A distant family. But sometimes it's a good thing as well to kind of get to know the family, how the dynamics work, get to know them, bond as well at the same time. But it's just, I think it's a very, you have to tread very carefully. It's
something, again, which is why I wanted to really discuss this topic. It's one of those controversial topics that tends to get brushed under the carpet, and it's only when things fester and go wrong. And then you hear all sorts of rumours, and the rumour mill comes out, and this is that environment that I'm hoping we can shift away from. And it's something that I've observed, with you guys, that you have that cohesiveness with the other side of the family. I mean, I've always said to my children, so Anon has come back to say, they don't come to you and you give advice. But Shirimasi, you've answered that in what you've got to be very careful what you say. You've got to be mindful you don't plant a seed. And that's very important. But I always say to my children that one thing that you have to remember about me is I will, where possible, take the side of the girl. The reason being is because she's coming into my family. I don't want her to ever feel a moment that I don't think of her as my daughter, that she's not part of the family. And then my son once did say, but Mum, what if I'm right? And I sat back down and at that point I had to take the mum hat off. Yeah. And I had to put my solicitor hat on. Yeah. And I said to him, sometimes it's not a matter about being right or wrong. It's about interpretation. Yeah. It's all subjective. Yeah. And I always say this, the stereotype typically is two sides to a coin. Yeah. But actually there isn't. There's three sides, right? Yeah. Now physically that's impossible. You've got a coin and you've got heads and tails. Yeah. But to that saying, I always say there's three sides. His, hers, and the truth. Because his and hers, they're going to be subjective. Yes. They're going to put their narrative forward, and they're going to take away all the facts, and they're going to it's purely based on emotion. Yeah. But then you've got the truth, and what is the truth? And then it's that interpretation level. Yeah. And then my kids do say to me, I have to deal with the solicitor. I want my mum. And I said, well, sometimes if you're going to act in such a way, I'm going to have to be that solicitor because I need to make sure that you feel loved, right? Loved enough that you can come to your mum. But whoever my daughter-in-law is going to be needs to know she can also come to me and that I'm not going to take sides. I'm not going to be biased because you two, and I say this to him, you and your missus will make up.
Yes.
Yeah. You'll get over that disagreement. You'll make up.
That's right.
Who's going to be the bad one? It's going to be me.
Yeah, you'll be the
right? It is going to be me. And she's going to then continue living her days thinking, my mother-in-law said this and my mother-in-law did that. And it's moving away from that mindset that as mother-in-laws, yes, be involved in your children's life.
I think it's navigating and supporting them. I think that's the key words of when you are bringing a daughter-in-law into your home. Honestly, it is about navigating and supporting them. I would actually say to the younger generation now is try and allow your mother-in-law to be your best friend. Yeah. Please try and do that. They're not out there to get you. You need to form a relationship with them. Try and go down that road because honestly, they will have your back because that mother-in-law knows that she's no threat. She's really wanting me to pull my hand out to her. She's putting her hand out to me. So naturally, she is gonna, bring her under her, umbrella and under her wing. And naturally, you will start forming a relationship and understanding each other. And I do think that, the backbone of that home, I understand there is the father who's a hierarchy, but the mothers, the matriarchs, they are the matriarchs in that home because they run that home, whether they're working full time like myself, I work full time, but I still run my home.
You cook and you do the cleaning and everything that comes with it, absolutely.
And the children come around all of that and your family does, but you can make or break that family.
Absolutely. I always say that a woman she's the gel. She can make or break that family. Yes. So whether that's daughter-in-laws, mother-in-laws, whether that's sister-in-laws as well, it needs to have that cohesiveness. Yeah. Now we've had a comment to say never forget, and in line with it being Ramadan FM, never forget you are Muslim first, British second, right? This is what we've had. Yeah. Sons and daughters have a duty to look after your parents. Yes. Right? I agree with that. Yes. Yeah. We are getting more and more westernized, but we cannot lose our identity. As Muslims, we have a duty of care. Yes, absolutely. But I think we also need to remember, and again, this is not meant to offend anyone, but I wholeheartedly know this, that it is not the daughter-in-law's responsibility or duty to take care of her in-laws. It is, in fact, the son's. If the daughter-in-law wants to, completely fine.
Yes.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly
It's an option.
fine.
Yeah.
It's an option.
Yes.
But it is the son's, and that's what the son needs to bear in mind. He needs to remember that's his mum, his dad first.
Yeah.
He has to take care. So
Yeah.
if he is thinking of coming home, taking his shoes and socks off and putting his feet on the table while his wife dotes hand on feet on his parents, he is wrong for that, right? And I am a firm believer of that, and I've actually looked into that because that's something I've taught my sons. That whenever you get married, whether you live with me or not, I would prefer if you didn't. That's my preference. But if you do live with me, do not expect my daughter-in-law to cook for me. If anyone, I'll cook for myself, or I expect you.
This is where the expectations come in.
There you go.
So this is why you need to know the family dynamics.
Yes. Yes.
If a girl is ready to get married to a boy, then he needs to be very clear that if I marry you, if we do get married, this is my mum and dad's expectations.
Yeah.
So the choice is up to that girl whether she can fulfill that or not. And unfortunately, sometimes families do have expectations.
Yes.
You know, if you work together, then it's not a problem. But when you don't know what you're going into, and then find out, well, you have to do this and you have to, this is what you have to do. Because I remember ages ago, somebody mentioned the girl had to clean the house before she went to work. And she had to get up 7 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes even earlier, to clean the whole house before she went to work.
And what was the mother-in-law doing?
That was their expectation.
Was she elderly or?
No,
Okay.
probably our age.
So this is where I think it's so important that
It's the
I've
mother-in-law's
always
mindset.
said that it's teamwork.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it is teamwork. We've gone away with that generation of mother-in-laws where they feel that a daughter-in-law comes into the house and they retire, you know, and they could be in their early 40s or 50s and they're still feeling that. I'm not saying that for anybody who's got ill health or anything like that. I'm talking about the ones that are very able-bodied and, you know, generally fit and healthy, but they've got this mindset, a very cultural mindset that once you become a mother-in-law, you can then, you take that apron off and I've retired to my chair now. And it's
dreams.
but that is a completely wrong mindset.
I
and it's
agree.
a very cultural mindset. So yes, Muslim first, as the anonymous person has obviously stated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, we're Muslims. It's, you know, let's respect each other and understand one another. And now we are talking about a younger generation who are exposed to social media now 24/7. Yeah, there is a lot of influence that's coming from that as well. And so you are dealing with a very different generation.
Absolutely. I do want to add to that. I do want to just let this be a reminder that one thing that I've seen, and again, I'm basing this all on my experience, okay? Whether that's me observing others or having lived through it myself, whatever it is, it's my experience, or it's my own opinion, and I don't speak for the majority out there. One thing I've noticed is there's all this, you mentioned that you raise your son and then you get them married, you are giving them away and someone else is coming in to take that responsibility. Yeah. Fine, I get that. But we also have to remember that what we as mothers can do for our son, right? Or what we as mothers can do for our daughter, their partner, their wife or their husband, can't do that because they're not in their life to play that mother role. They're in their life to play the partner role, whether that's a husband or the wife. So what I've observed a lot is mothers getting very, what's the right word? Getting, not picky, but getting very, when they don't want to let go of their child.
Yeah.
They want to hold on to that child. You know, they don't want to let that grasp go. And I think it's a case of we need to move away from that, move away from it, possessive. That's the word. Thank you to my producer who actually wrote it on the screen for me. Possessive. There's They'll hold on them. They don't want to let them go. But they have to remember, you're not letting your child go. Just like you let them go school or had to make them go school and college and even maybe university or travel the world, you're allowing them to grow.
Yeah.
You know, they have to take responsibility of another person, especially if you've got a son or a daughter. They're taking responsibility of someone other than themselves. And you have to remember that relationship is very different. So when mother-in-laws, and I've seen this, when mother-in-law's like, oh, my daughter-in-law this, my daughter-in-law that. As a mom, I hope and pray I never ever feel like that in any given moment, because as much as I love my son and as much as I've taken care of him, I was his chef, his cook, his cleaner, his nurse, his doctor, whatever it was that I played in his life, I am not going to be his other half. Right? That's not my role.
Definitely.
And I'm going to have to let him go. And this is where I see the prejudices come in. This is where I see some attitudes where it's like, oh, he lets her do this, oh, she gets to do this, or she doesn't say this, and it's stuff like that, but that's nothing to do with you.
I think
that's their relationship.
There's also where the mother-in-laws are looking at the daughter-in-laws and say they're being spoiled. It's like, well, how about me then? You know, there's mums are thinking, how about me? Why? What about me? Why did I not get a bunch of flowers? She got a bunch of flowers. Why did I not get a bunch of flowers? You know, it's things like that. And you think, wait, hold on a minute. You need to step back because, you know, you are also, you know, you've got your partner and, you know, you've gone through, and your relationships would be different to what your son's or daughter's relationship would be with their partners. So you could never, ever compare. Honestly, I would just embrace it, enjoy, you know, the changes. And you, as a mum, you've got to be, you know, that happiness, to see that them two happy, it makes you happy. And I think your happiness will come through that. Because the last thing that you want is to cause the uproar between the two and disharmonize what they've got between them. And you're going to be the culprit. And then it's no wonder then we get this bad name of mother-in-laws.
That's it. Absolutely. Now, we have about a minute and a half on the clock. Okay. So what I do want is to approach both of you very quickly, take about 20 seconds each. And if you can, give your golden nuggets from your experience. So, Sophie, you are a mother-in-law to a daughter-in-law. So give your golden nuggets, some top tips that you can give. And you've got 20 seconds. I am putting you on the clock.
I'm going to say, please get to understand and know each other. When your son if they found this partner, please try and get to know that person, understand their background, understand the dynamics of how they've been brought up as well, what's important to them. I think really get to understand each other and allow her to understand you. Bring her into your home, allow them to be exposed to our way of life, and it's just warming up to each other. And I think that was be my key nugget kind of advice is get to know each other.
Jazakallah. Shirim, I see you've got about 20 seconds as well.
You're right. So my advice to anybody is get to know the family as well. You'll get to know the boy, but introduce yourself to the family as well. Maybe if you can before marriage, and some people might agree, some people might not agree, but get to know them, go out for coffees with your mother-in-law or something like that. So I think it's really important.
Jazakallah so much. Okay, so you heard it here. Myth busting about the next generation of mother-in-laws on